Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hello guys, welcome back to the geography lesson. So today we have chapter 7 and the name of this chapter is drainage. Now when we listen to this term drainage, we often think it is something related to drain, but then it's not related to drain. It is actually related to the river system. How interesting, isn't it? So in geography, the river system, how it flows, how the river flows, what it creates, and how the direction of the rivers are impacted, what causes it, what it does to the landscapes. So that entire system is called drainage. Alright, so in this chapter, what we are going to learn is about the rivers in our country, found in our country, and how different rivers do have different impacts on the landscape in different parts of our country. So that is basically what this chapter is going to teach us. Alright, so let us begin. Now the first thing that we have to address here, that we have to know, is that what we mean by drainage. It's not drain. Alright, this term drainage is used to indicate or to understand the area of a river system. So the river, as it flows from the place or the spot where it originates, there is a source, right, from where the river starts to flow, and then it flows for a long time, sometimes for a short time, and then drains to an ocean, into an ocean or sea or lake or any other surface area. Now that entire system, from where it originates and from where it drains, that area that the river covers and how it covers that area or denoting that system is called drainage. Alright, so it is not only the water in the river, but it is also the land, from where it originates, where it flows, how it flows, what is causing its flow, what is impacting its direction, what the rivers are creating, what shapes they are forming. So all that is used to denote or to understand the drainage system. So the system, drainage is the term to understand all that happens with the flow of river. Alright, so the area that it covers, the things that it does, the river does, how it is caused, what are its effects, all that is drainage. Alright, that comes under the term drainage. So drainage is actually not drain. It's not related to drains or not even associated to drains, but it's actually the rivers. The river system in geography is called drainage. Alright, so with that we have quickly come to an end of the introductory or the first part of the chapter. So as we come to an end, the first question that we have here is define drainage. So drainage is a term used for the area covered by the river system. Okay, or you can also say the area covered by the river system is called drainage. Alright, let's move on to the first topic. Now in this first topic we will look at the rivers. So when I told you, when we learned about what the term drainage means, immediately it took us to rivers, right? Drainage includes rivers, the river system. So now let us look at the rivers or the river systems. Now drainage, as we by now know, it is actually the area covered by the river or the system. Okay, the river system. Now when we say river system, don't get confused. River system means the course that it follows, how it flows, from where it flows, what streams are joining, what streams are getting divided from the main channel. So all that system forms the river, right? So the area covered by that system is called drainage. All right. Now, if we look at the river, we see one big or small river, but the river always has its origin or the start of the river, from where it begins. So how it begins? Small streams of river, they flow from different direction. Okay, so there are small streams of rivers and they flow from different direction and they meet at the point and then they form a large river. All right, so this becomes the main river. Okay, now this river originates from this area and then finally it drains into the ocean or the sea or even the lake. This is what the flow of a river looks like. All right. Now, as we say or as we learn about the flow of the river, then another term that we come across is the drainage basin. Now, what is drainage basin? Area drained by a single river system is called drainage basin. So, when there is one single river involved, one main river involved, and where it drains and the area that it covers in from the spot of its origin to the spot where it drains, that area that it covers is called drainage basin of the single river, not multiple rivers. Okay, one single river. So here is an image which you can find also in your book, and this image tells us about the story of the river, one single river. So it begins from the source of the river. There's always a source, a place of origin. Okay, so from there you can see there are small streams here joining. Okay, and those streams, the waters of those streams, they join to make the main river. So this is the main river which flows in its own course, in its own direction, makes various shapes and then finally drains into the ocean or the sea. Okay, now right now you don't have to understand about the various shapes that it forms along its course while it flows. We don't have to focus on that. What we have to learn is that, or remember is that it flows from the source and drains into the ocean or lake or the sea. Okay, now here we must also remember that as this single river flows, there are various stages. Okay, so those are called upper course, middle course, lower course. Okay, so this is the upper course, this here is the middle course, and this right here is the lower course. So like everything, even rivers go through stages as they flow. No matter how long they flow, no matter how long the river is, no matter how short the river is, but they undergo various stages as they flow, and those stages are mainly 3 stages, and they are called upper course, middle course and lower course. Okay, and remember, the area drained by a single river is called drainage basin. All right. Now, sometimes the rivers are separated. Okay, for example, imagine there's a single river flowing here, and right here is a mountain or a hill. All right. Now, because of this hill or an elevated surface, it has a height, right? So obviously the river cannot flow over it. Right? The water cannot flow over it. So what it does is, then another river which flows beside this river, river A, it can flow beside it, parallel or away from it. So what I'm trying to tell you is that this elevated hill here or elevated landscape separates river A from river B, because there is a hill here, alright, or an elevated surface that can look like a tabletop as well. So because of the elevated or heightened surface, what it does, the river is divided from one another. Okay, so this divider of the river is called water divide. Very simple, it divides the water. Alright. So as you can see, the drainage system is controlled by the relief features. Relief means the landscape. In the first chapter, we learned about various landscapes that our country has, right? We learned about the mountains, we learned about the plateaus, we learned about deserts, we learned about coastal areas, the coastal ghats, the western and eastern ghats, the peninsular part of India. So all that landscape, the different features of the landscape that we have in our country, those landscapes also play a very important role in the drainage system, because those landscapes, they determine where the river flows, in which direction it flows, how it flows. If there is a mountain in the middle, obviously the river will flow not through it but away from it. The mountain will act as a water divide and divide the water, divide the rivers. Okay. Now in India we have two main river systems. Alright, they are the Himalayan rivers and the peninsular rivers. Now these are two important rivers. Okay. Now as you can see from the name itself, we can say all the rivers that originate in the Himalayas are the Himalayan rivers, and those rivers which originate in the peninsular part of India is called the peninsular rivers. Alright, so according to the landscape, according to the relief feature of our country, the rivers are divided accordingly. Okay, so the rivers that are found in the northern part, the Himalayan region, they are Himalayan rivers, and the rivers that are found in the southern part or the peninsular part, they are peninsular rivers. Now these rivers, obviously they are rivers, so they could be same, right? But no, they are different from each other in many ways. Alright, and we will learn it in the following topics. Now, the Himalayan rivers, they are perennial. Okay, so this perennial is a new term for you. What does perennial mean? Perennial means that the water in the river, they are present in the river throughout the year. So even if it's a very hot summer season, the water does not dry up. Even if it's winter, which can be dry, even if it gets cold, the water does not dry up. So irrespective of what season it is, irrespective of how the weather condition is, the water of those rivers do not dry up. So those rivers are called perennial. They never dry up. They have water all throughout the year. Okay, so the Himalayan rivers are perennial rivers, and they are fed by rain and snow or the melting ice of the glaciers in the Himalayas. Okay, so the water that these rivers have, they are fed by the rain and the melting ice. The two very important Himalayan rivers of our country is Ganga, and the other one is Brahmaputra. So these are two important Himalayan rivers of our country, and they originate in the Himalayas, in the north of the Himalayas. Okay, and they cut through the mountains. So from the Himalayas they are originating, and then they flow through the rest of the Himalayan range. They flow through the mountains. As they flow through it, they flow rapidly. Okay, rapidly means faster. Okay, not slowly, they flow rapidly. And as they flow rapidly, cutting through the mountains, they form gorges. Now, gorges are deep valleys. Okay, if you go to the mountain states, if you go to Himachal Pradesh, if you go to the northern part of West Bengal, Sikkim, so all the states that lie along the Himalayan range, you see that the valleys are very deep, right? They are so steep. These valleys are called gorges, alright, because the rivers have been cutting through the mountains, and as they cut through the mountains rapidly, they form deep gorges, okay, deep valleys, alright. So here is an image of a gorge. So here both sides of the river are very steep. These are very deep valleys, alright. The Himalayan rivers have long courses, meaning they flow for a long time. They cover very long distances. These rivers are not usually short. You can see in the map, you can see on the internet, Google it. See how long the river Ganga is. See how long the Brahmaputra river is, and for how long it flows to drain into the Bay of Bengal. Alright? The distance that it covers from the source to the place where it drains, that distance is very long. Alright? And the upper course of these rivers, remember I told you that the rivers go through three main stages: upper course, middle course, and the lower course. Now, in the upper course, these Himalayan rivers have very intensive erosion. Now, what is erosion? As the river flows through very rapidly, it erodes or it tries to take away slowly. The process is very slow, but then it sort of carves the mud, the rocks, the sand as from the area where it flows. So slowly as it carves out, then it makes deep valleys and it makes other formations. So that process of slowly cutting the mud, the rocks, and taking away the sand from the bed or from the sides of the area where it flows, that is called erosion. So the upper course, in the upper course, these Himalayan rivers have very intensive erosion. Okay, the erosional activity here is very intense. All right. So as they erode, they carry along with them silts and sand. Okay, so they're not only wearing the sand and the silt and the rocks, but they're carrying them as well. Okay. Now, if you come to the middle and lower course, then we see that these Himalayan rivers, they form meanders, oxbow lakes, and deltas. Alright, so as the river flows from the upper course and then it comes to the middle and the lower course, and then it forms meanders. These are called meanders. Alright, they form S-like structures or shapes, alright, and oxbow lakes. So as they flow, then sometimes what happens is that they flow in such formations that slowly these water, they sort of join, and then they form the remaining water here. They form like a lake, and this is called oxbow lake. Alright, and as they drain, then they drain into various channels. This is the sea, and they drain into various channels, and as they drain into various channels, they form these tiny islands, and the water flow through them. Alright, these are called deltas. Alright, so these happen in the lower and the middle course. And along its course, as it flows, sometimes or mostly small rivers join them. Okay, so as this river is flowing, this is the Himalayan River, okay, and one of the Himalayan rivers, and as it flows, many rivers join them in their course. Now these rivers that join them, they are called tributaries. All right. So a river system is basically, it consists of the main river or the large river and its tributaries. So there is the main river and it has its tributaries. So this is the river system. Alright. Now the spot, the place from where the river begins its journey, that is called source. Okay. And the spot, the place where it drains its water into the ocean or sea or lake, that is called its mouth. Alright, so the end of the journey of the river. So the flow of the river is like a journey, right? It is going through a journey from the start to the end. The start is called source and the end of it is called mouth. Alright. And as the river flows through a river valley, right? I told you that the rivers cut through mountains and they form valleys, right? Now, as they flow through the valleys, the bed, okay, the surface which is submerged by the water of the river, it is called bed or the channel, all right, on top of which the river flows. So often when we go to a river and we swim, we sometimes hit our head with the on the bed of the river, right? And there we find many rocks and sometimes we find glasses and then we injure ourselves. That's why whenever we jump into the river, we are told to be careful, right? Otherwise we'll hit our head, we'll injure ourselves. So the bed of the river is that area which is submerged by the water of the river, okay, and the land which is on the either side of the river, that is called the bank. So the east bank, the west bank, all right, and the land or the landscape which separates the river is called the divides or the water divide, right, which we already learned a while ago. Now these divides, the water divides, they play a very important role in determining the direction of the flow of the river. Like I said, if the river is flowing and there is a mountain or the hill here, now the river will just take a turn and then will not go across it. It cannot go across it, right? So it will just turn away from it. So this acts as a water divide and this is determining, this is influencing the flow or the direction of the river. Alright. Now this water divide is also called watersheds. Okay. This is also called watershed and it also decides in which the direction of the rainwater will flow. So for example, if on this side it rains, all right, so this portion of the hill, it collects the rainwater and from here again a small stream can flow, all right. So what we can understand is that these water divides or watersheds also determines where the rainwater will be collected and from where the river can flow. All right. Now the area of land from which river collects water is called drainage basin. So this area from where the river is collecting the water and then beginning its flow, this area is called drainage basin. All right. And we have already learned about tributaries. Now, what are sub-tributaries? So, I told you that tributaries are those smaller rivers or streams that join the main river. These are the tributaries. Now, sub-tributaries are those smaller streams and smaller rivers which join the tributaries. So it looks like veins, the veins that we have on our body, right? So it looks like a vein that the river system forms, all right? So the river system also has tributaries and sub-tributaries. And then we have another term which is called catchment area. Now, what is catchment area? It is an area drained by a single river. So when a single river drains, alright, so that area is called catchment area. Okay, so there are many terms that we are coming across as we go on with this chapter. So these terms are very important. Okay, so once we know what water divide is, then we come to know what watersheds are. Then we also come to know what drainage basins are. Then we also come to know what catchment area is, where the single river drains, alright, the area in which it drains. So these are very important to remember along with as we go along with the chapter. Now, when the water drains, okay, when the water flows, then it forms different patterns. All right, it forms like we briefly saw that how it forms meanders, how it forms lakes, right? But there are different patterns along with the formation of lakes, along with the formation of S-like shapes. There are different shapes that it takes. There are different formations that it develops into. Now, those patterns, obviously, they depend upon the relief, the physical landscape, the geological structure, and the climatic condition, right? If there is no rain, if the area is very arid, then those areas will not have lakes, or those areas will have rivers which dry up during the hot summer season. If there are mountains, then there will be deep gorges or there will be meanders. So all that patterns that the river forms, they depend highly upon the relief, upon the geological structure, upon the rocks or over which it's flowing, upon the climatic conditions. All right. So now let us briefly look at some of the important patterns that the rivers form. The first one is called dendritic pattern. Now this dendritic pattern is formed with a single main stream. So there is a single main stream. This main stream has tributaries, many tributaries, which look like branches of a tree. So we see the tree, right? There's a main trunk and it has multiple branches. It has many branches. So this dendritic pattern also looks like that. So there is a main river, okay? And it has multiple tributaries and sub-tributaries. So you see, it looks like a tree. Now it develops in a region which is made up of rocks having uniform structure. So here the rocks which lie along its beds, which lie on either side of its channel, on either side of its bank, those rocks have to have uniform structure. They should not have ununiform, or if they are higher, lower, or if the shapes or the heights are not uniform, then this pattern cannot be formed. When the rocks are of uniform, of same structure, then this pattern is formed. All right. And then the direction of the river and its tributaries are determined by the slope. Okay, so the slope means where it's tilted, how it's tilted, which side it's tilted. So that determines where the river will flow and its tributaries will also flow. Okay. So it creates ridges and spurs. That means the valleys and steep valleys and steep ridges. Alright. So these kind of patterns, they create spurs and ridges. These are also kind of valleys that are created. Alright. As the rivers cut through the landscape. And the river, it looks like veins of a leaf. So if you look at a leaf, say for example, this is a leaf. Right? This is somewhat similar to what a leaf looks like. Now the dendritic pattern of the river looks exactly like the veins of the leaf. Alright? So here is an image for you to help you understand what it looks like. So you see, it looks like a tree with its branches, and it also looks like a leaf with its veins. Alright. The next pattern that we are going to look at is called trellis pattern. Now this pattern is a rectangular pattern. Okay. It does not look like veins. It does not look like a tree, but rather it looks like a rectangular pattern. Okay, something like this. And the river flows along these lines. Alright. So this pattern is formed when a long river is joined by, so this is the long and main river. Okay, so when this river is joined by short streams at right angles, so if there is another stream flowing and then joins the main river at right angles means the angle between these is 90 degrees, right? So the when the small streams, short streams join the long ones, long rivers at right angle, then that is a rectangular pattern which is formed, and that rectangular pattern is called trellis pattern. Okay. Now this develops in a region which is made up of alternate belts of hard and soft rocks. Here the rocks need not be uniform, they need to be hard and soft. Alright, and these lie at right angles to the general slope. So the slope of the surface has to be in right angle with the rocks, okay, below which the main river flows. So here what you need to understand and remember is that the river forms a rectangular pattern. The short streams join the main river at 90 degrees or at right angles. Alright. So here you can see this is the main stream, and the small short streams, they join the main river at right angles. Alright, so the angle here is 90 degrees. Alright. The third one is called radial pattern. Now this is another pattern. Now here the streams or the rivers, they flow in different direction from a central peak or dome like structure. So imagine there's like a peak, okay, or a dome structure. Now from here the streams flow in different direction. So they flow in different direction from the peak. Alright. So they flow away from the peak, and this develops in a dome or volcanic cone on a volcanic mountain. Alright, and the rivers that flow here are flowing outward of the peak, and they form a pattern like the spokes of the wheel. So if you imagine a wheel, this is the center, right, and it has spokes going away from the center. Alright, so the radial pattern looks similar to this. because from the center of the dome or the cone-like structure or the volcanic mountain or hill, the river flows outward, and it appears like a spokes of wheel. Okay, so here you can see this is the center of the cone or the dome or volcanic cone, and the river flows outside of it. All right. The fourth one is called centrifugal drainage system. Now this centrifugal drainage pattern. Now this pattern is found in dry and arid areas like Rajasthan. Okay. And in this kind of drainage pattern, the streams converge from all sides towards a central depression where there is a lake. So this centrifugal pattern is opposite to the radial pattern. In the radial pattern, from the tip of a cone or a peak, the water was flowing outward. But here, the water flows inward. Okay, inward from outward. All right. So here you can see the water flows inward. So with that, we have come to the end of this topic.